back in the day when we just, like, our mothers and fathers would let us go out into nature and we just wouldn't come home until they rang the bell at the end of the day, right? And so we lived in this place where they would, it was a very old house, so they would have, like, where they dumped trash and then it would have been buried by the earth. So we would go digging for treasures, and then we'd take all those treasures and we'd do these, make these forts out in the woods. And as installations, though, they were not like forts, they were like crazy forest installations. And then we'd have this competition with this other gang on the other side of the woods. There were a lot of like bicycle parts in the ground, so we took all the old bicycle bent up wheels and we tied them to these vines, so the whole thing was covered with bicycle wheels, and we made this like kind of igloo-ish kind of shape, and then we hung all the bottles down from the bicycle wheels, and that was the torture chamber, actually. I was the head of the torture chamber. I didn't think I was an artist. I didn't identify as an artist at all, even going into college. I'm like the only artist in my family. And so my parents brainstormed me into thinking I was going into advertising. So that's what I did. And I always took art classes. They were like my sanity, always, like forever. And they were my favorite classes. And but then when I was in advertising, I was so miserable in New York City. It was just, I did it for 1 year, and even my bosses, they'd take me into their office and they'd say, Pamela, you don't want to be in this business. Like, you're way too creative. And I'm like, oh no, I really like my job. I was trying to be so positive. I wanted to move up. And then I just made myself ill being in an office and everything. And I realized I had to make art. So I quit. And then I went to work for an incredible woman who was a photographer. And she was an older woman. She's like the founder of Junkyard Playgrounds, and she was a real, very, one of the most human people I've ever met. It's like so caring, and she would travel like to Amazonia and research river blindness and do these photographs, and went and lived with the widows of the coal miners in Appalachia, after the mines had caved in. She just had this incredible life, and so I became her assistant. I never traveled with her, but I got to live in her beautiful apartment when she was gone. So that sort of drove me off into my direction. I lived in France for like 25 years, and in this village, it was a little village of like 1,500 people in the very center of France. And I was a teaching artist because that's what I was doing. I mean, I was a professor at the Abbey because it was a program where they had international students come. So I worked there, and then I did community sculptures with different villages. We took like plastic cellophane and we wrapped it around like this grove of trees and made all these these performance areas. And then the students made all these like wearable art costumes out of plastic, and people had never danced or made art, and the people and the old ladies in the village would help me sew all these things. I mean, everyone was involved. I mean, it became, oh my gosh, after that first year, I mean, everyone from all over the region would come to see these like wild events. So it was really fun. It takes a community to do that. Like there, what I had like my 50 to 70 students were trapped into working with me. My director, I said, you have to trust me on this one. You have to give me all those students and make them all do this as their community service. And, of course, not a lot of them didn't want to do it, getting the people. But in the end, they were all like very safe things they could do. And they all had a role that they could embrace. And they loved it. Oh my gosh. So here I'm still trying to figure out like where we have enough people we could get involved to do that, but we're getting there. Yeah. My work is, it's 100% like community based. Like I couldn't, like you see the volume of things in my studio, I couldn't do this work without like an army of people. And so, I mean, I love working with children, and I love working with elders. I mean, just every kind of person. So it taught me just how to motivate and to work together, how to work collectively. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's the biggest joy, is when you can connect into a community and they feel like they are part of the project, and you're working together, and it's as much their project as your project, and they bring their friends along, and yeah. So that's what I'm doing here. This is like for a community project where they're going to help me unravel like mounds of rope. So I'm just trying it out. it's a little overwhelming always, the beginning. And I guess it's like anything, you sort of like, what am I getting myself into? Because you just have to open yourself up to getting materials, and you can't say no if people are helping to find you materials. So I've started working, I mean, my work is very much about the environment. And so I've started connecting into these different organizations, and they know that I'm looking for different materials. It's like I have agents helping me find things. And then just reaching out to friends. My residents from Hugh Oaks, they're like, Pamela, like one of my residents found me the rope in South Thomas, and they sent me a picture. They said, oh, check out all this rope. Yeah. But then you have to, it's like the logistics behind that. Like I had to rent a truck, and I had to get down there, and you have to go, and you have to go through the owner of this like giant fishing yard, and then you go and you meet the fishermen. You go onto their boats, because like sometimes the nets are still on their trawlers and they have to cut them off, so you have to go and you hear the stories. So it's really and then they tell you about the different nets, what the nets were used for, what the name of the boat was it came off of. You learn what the ends of the net are for. And I always film them. I'm so interested in it, and I always bake them cakes. And then usually it takes a couple visits before you get the nets, and then you go. So I guess it was last week I was in New Bedford, and they filled my truck with that. But the problem is when I get on this end, I have to have help to get them into my studio, and it's so stressful. I just try to take things one day at a time, because they're like weigh tons. We were in the U-Haul with grinders, and we had to grind off like parts of the chain because we couldn't move them. It was so heavy. Yeah, it was a huge job, yeah. But it's a wealth of materials. I just have to now, you kind of have to organize it. That's what's happening now, is you have to take it all apart and organize it and clean it and dry it, and then I paint it, and so it's just it's the preparation of the materials is a lot of work. I collect things, I don't know why, I just am attracted to the material, and then one day I'm like, oh, that's what I'm going to do with it, and it's like how to dismantle this accumulation of materials and take it like as far down as you can, take it apart as far as you can take it, and then put it back together in a different way. It takes like a month to figure out a material, really, because you really have to get to know it and tame it, and it's all really overwhelming and daunting, and it's a tough process at the beginning, but in the end you can do so much with like just a piece of rope. Like you could take this and you could rebraid it, you can really turn it into shapes. There's so much you can do with this. You probably should have like some rope over there that you're unraveling. Actually, that's why I function. Like in the summer, my residents at Hugh Oaks all unraveled rope for me. Everyone is busy, and it actually, when you're focusing and working on something like this that doesn't take a lot of brain power, it opens up something inside you, and conversation flows. This incredible like community magic happens always. I mean, this seems like it would be really boring. I mean, I do so many boring like drilling my bottle caps or whatever, just like very repetitive gestures that you'd think I'd be bored, but I'm super like, it's meditative, I guess, and I just makes me daydream and think about things, and keeps me like my energy calm. I never work on just one thing. I work on like 5 different things at once. I'm like just like a kid. You have to so I have my stations of like different things, and yeah, and I'm usually have people helping me and volunteers coming in, so it's not like a quiet studio. My home life is extremely quiet because my studio life is usually really active. Almost everything I do is related to like using materials that are recycled, that are cleaning the environment, that have a message about the environment, that can be used as a tool. Like a lot of times, since I work with the community, like we'll talk like what about this rope. We'll say, well, this rope actually the fishermen had it, they were using this and it floats on the water, but the problem was this rope would capture the whales, and fish could it float, and so they're having to use a different kind of rope now, and then we could talk about, so the materials are like segues into important conversations. They asked me to teach a class, like I have like college students they're each paired with an elder with dementia, and they're not art students. We've designed this class where they can make so many decisions. I never get to make decisions in life anymore. And so like presenting, and they're also really into the senses. Like they're like, that's the level that this population lives on. This like the tact, touching things, smelling things. And it's so rewarding. And I think they give me a lot of ideas, like I remember one time I brought in a project and with jewelry, I was bringing costume jewelry and these frying pans, and I painted all these different colors, and they started putting the jewelry like all over the frying pans. I'm like, oh, look at this jewelry in a frying pan, and they all started laughing, and it just gave me a whole idea, though. I mean, so they give back a lot, yeah. But that is one of my most important missions now is trying to work with that community and get other people into that world. We all need to be a kid. We all need to think more like children. That's what the elders do. The elders with living with dementia, they manage to feel and experience life like a child. They in the very simple, basic, like joyful way, which is so interesting to me. Yeah. And we make it so complicated. Adults do, Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Yeah. You just have to keep going and. Gosh, now I'm 60, and I guess when you hit people start to take you a little more seriously when you hit 60, I guess. It's a good thing, but I love getting older, and I love being an older woman artist. It's so empowering. Yeah, it's fabulous. It's great to get older. Yeah.